This is Groundeffected. My name is your dad, and I made the Bloodbowl Stadium from Kraken Studios, complete with a reroll board and a turn board, as well as scoreboard and working lights. Stick around if you want to see how I made this magical Bloodbowl Stadium. At first, I didn't know if I was actually going to record any of this, and this is why we're jumping in so far into the build already. I had already printed a lot of these parts. I printed these across all the machines that I have in the shop. We ended up going through almost 10 liters of resin. There was so much wasted supports. I just didn't even know what to do with myself at that point. And in reality, I printed so many parts, I was not actually sure whether I even wanted to do this anymore. But I called George over, and when George came over, I changed my mind. And this is where we started to put this board together. And now, as you know, I'm a very big fan of the fingertip to elbow measuring technique, as well as not necessarily using a ruler, because I feel like if you use these things, are you really an artist at all? That is an absolute joke, and if you feel upset about that, leave some words down below to let me know exactly how upset you feel. Now I'm going to show you using a very dangerous machine how we cut a couple of pieces of wood to make a nice square, of which I can then place the board into the inside of. I glued this board together using super glue like an absolute schmuck. If you're going to build one of these boards, buy some wood glue. I wish I could tell myself this, and I tell myself this every time I build one of these, and I still don't buy wood glue. However, this is a very quick way of doing it. If you were to build a board and you were impatient just like me, you can do it this way. A little bit of super glue, an activator, it makes a very quick building if you ask me. The only thing is, I went through about 14 bottles of super glue, and that cost a lot of money. I took these sharp, long metal things and smacked them into the board using a very heavy, weirdly shaped metal thing. And this was to create some sort of structure and keep the board together. I then tested my luck with my dice, and I had none. So we decided to build the rest of the board. I wanted there to be a separate piece in the center and the two sides to be where all the rest of the cool stadium and stands and scoreboard and all the rest of the stuff was going to be. And the reason I wanted this was in case I needed to change it. In case I wanted to turn it from maybe a grass stadium into a different stadium. Then I could just remove the two sides and build two more sides for it and flip over the board or whatever the case is. So I built two sides and a centerpiece. I then took these parts back up into my studio and I put a piece of polystyrene at the bottom of them, and this was to create some kind of structure. I realize now that using this was probably not the most strongest thing that I could have used, considering I put solid 3D printed resin parts over the top of them. However, it was just a place to keep things nice and straight while I glued it all in, and once it had dried, it made itself a nice structure. Once I was satisfied with both of those two thin pieces, I took them outside and I spray painted them with Citadel spray paint black all over them. I used the different paint on the sides of the wood because the wood is absorbent and sucks up the paint, and I didn't want to waste the Citadel, which is quite an expensive paint. I then went back into the middle board and I took a bunch of pieces of polystyrene and placed them in just to raise the inside a little bit. In the future, I may use some grass and build this actually with real flock grass on the inside. But for now, I'm just going to use this board because this makes it easy for me to flip it over and use it. I want to actually be able to use this board in my studio. The reason that we built this board was to be able to allow people to come in and play on my board. If you were interested in playing on this board and you are in the West Sussex area, or even just around that area, and decide you want to come into the shop, come in, and maybe you will find Frankie, because sometimes I have Frankie come in and help me paint things. That is a lie. Frankie forgot his orcs from the last video we did. If you want to see that video, or you're interested in how we built another board, that will be in the top corner right now. Frankie had helped us to dry brush a load of wood. There was a lot of wooden pieces, namely the stands that are on the sides, and also the little wooden bits on these little tiles that go into the small pieces on the side. And we needed to dry brush all of those to make it look like wood. I also dry brushed the grass. I'm not sure if this was probably a good idea. I don't know. I dry brushed it anyway, hoping that if I did miss anything, at least it wouldn't be black underneath and it would still kind of look like grass and you wouldn't see it. I then took some washes and I airbrushed that throughout all the stone bits and on some of the other wooden pieces. As I'm going, I'm putting in the main bits of the elements of these side panels and stuff so that I can check if I'm getting the shadows in the right place. Basically, that's all I'm doing, is adding shadows. If you're going to use your airbrush like this, just think of it like you're adding shadows. Place the part in, don't glue it in, but just stick it in place and add the shadows. If the shadow spills over onto the building, fine, let it be like that, because that will give you a better look. It'll make everything seem more uniform. It was then time for me to do the tedious task of adding freaking grass to every single little piece here. Now, I watch YouTube videos just like you do, and I'd seen once in a YouTube video to put my wife's pantyhose sock cut off of one of her favorite pantyhose over my vacuum cleaner's pipe. And let me tell you, I don't know if this was helpful or not, because it was helpful to pick it all up, but getting it back out the sock again was extremely difficult. Anyway, what I ended up doing was just scooping this back up as many times as possible and repeating the process until I had what looked like grass on the sides of my stadium. Now you can start to see it coming together, and all that's left now is to start adding the details onto the rest of the buildings, and also to add some lights to those spotlights on the side. There is a load of signage around the field, and for me to do that, the best thing that I felt like doing was sponging it first with white. After I'd sponged it, I came back with colors later and painted them over the top. The reason for the sponging is to make it not look perfect. I didn't want it to look perfect because basically, in theory, these probably would be some kind of gremlin, goblin, I don't know, something would have painted this, and it wouldn't have been a computer or a human who's just painting their miniatures. So it wouldn't be perfect. It would need to look like it was painted by a very small thing, and it's aged and lived in, and it's doing its thing in a fantasy world. Now, I also had to add some grass to the little additional pieces that I wanted to put on the board. There are some goalposts in this Kraken set, and to be honest, people keep asking me what are the goalposts for, and I don't really know what to say to them. They look cool. They're there for to look cool. Also, I totally robbed this dude's image off of I don't even know where. It was on a website that I found, and I literally just robbed this dude's image to make some very fake banners, which are adverts on the side of the field. If I'm able to find this artist's work again, because it was quite a difficult find, if I can find them, I will link them and their socials in the description below so you can go check them out for yourself. Now you can see these fences that I have, they have these bases on, and in reality this was not going to work for me because I had cut up my board in such a way that this just wouldn't work. So I cut off those bases and I glued the fences onto the side of the thin panels that go onto the edge of the board. I also then did a load of trimming over all the metallic bits, and I'm going to leave you with a couple of visuals of that. In order to bring these advertising boards to look like they still fit on the board, I needed to add the grass on their bases as well. I originally contemplated cutting them off their bases too, and then I realized that would be way too much work, and I'm so not doing that. So I just added a longer grass. On everything else, I added a 2mm grass. On these things, I added a 4mm grass, because in my mind, they probably wouldn't be able to cut the grass around them, and they would be lazy and just leave it to grow. So I decided to have slightly longer grass on my banners. Once I've got all the details to the point that I needed them, I airbrushed a load of shadows, even over the grass, because you need to make sure that these things have depth. I then took this back down into my studio and placed it along the side, and I went back upstairs and grabbed the rest of the bits that I need to add onto this board. These bits are going to come in the fashion of all the advertisements and all the other little bits and pieces that go along on the board. And while I place all these bits onto the side of the board to make this board look as epic as it possibly can, I want to talk about how I came to making this board. I was scrolling on the YouTubes the other day, and I saw the miniature hobbyist had made a Bloodbowl stadium, and I was already toying with the idea of making a Bloodbowl stadium, and he just showed me that Kraken Studios had made this really epic set to build yourself a stadium, which you can find. I will leave a link in the description for Kraken Studios. This is not a sponsored video, but I'll leave the link anyway, so you can find this to make it yourself if you want to. Or alternatively, if you live within the area and you're thinking of starting Blood Bowl, or you play a Blood Bowl league, then now is the time for me to plug my studio. I have a studio in West Sussex in Littlehampton, which has a shop in it, and if you would like to come and support my shop, I would be very appreciative of this, because we have all the Games Workshop products that you might possibly need. In fact, we don't have them all, because I have to order them, because I don't have a very big shop. And if you would kindly come and bought more of the parts, I can get more parts and then have a bigger shop, and then you can get more parts, and it's like a big vicious circle. But if you are interested in playing Blood Bowl, this board will be available, and I will make an announcement on my Instagram or Facebook, somewhere, one of those social medias, of when we are going to be opening up the league for you to come and play on this board. And if you are interested in that, then please make sure to follow my socials so that you don't miss out. Test one for spotlights of Blood Bowl Stadium. Is it going to be bright enough? I'm now blind. This was also the time where I needed to put light onto the board, because building a board as epic as this is not good enough. I decided to add some LEDs into those spotlights that go around the board, and once I'd got those LEDs done and I'd plugged them in to make sure that nothing was going to explode, that was pretty much where I called this project done. Now I hope that you've managed to take something out of this video that will help you making something that you want to make in the future. I don't know what you're going to make, but if you're going to make it and this video helped you, leave a like, leave some words, and share this video with your gran, because I'm pretty sure she would like it too. Also, I would like to say a super special thank you to my patrons for their support and help blinding my eyeballs with the lights of the Patreon. If you would like to support me over on Patreon, there is a link in the description, and make sure to check out my studio on Instagram or wherever. And now this is the best part of the video. This is when I tell you as a person, if you didn't like what you saw in this video, you had a choice, and that was either to click off and watch something else, or you can kindly fuck off. Always leave them guessing.